All right, the time is 5:30 on June 25th, 2024, and we'll begin our Board of Education regular meeting. Ms. Harrington, please let the record show that all board members are present and Board Member Byrne is attending by Zoom. And our Chief Communications Officer, Mr. Stephen Hall, will introduce students from the Middle School Fine Arts to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, board members. Tonight we are pleased to introduce you to several Explore students who are participating in the Middle School Fine Arts Academy that is currently being held at Parkview High School. Please come forward as I call your name, students. We have Riley Blair, Judah Cordova, and Sophia Hostler. Welcome. I'm going to take a moment and read about each of these students. These students are among more than 140 middle school students who are exploring their artistic talents by taking classes in theater, dance, music, and art this summer. They were selected as representatives tonight by Dr. Jara Gillespie, who is the Academy principal, and this is how she describes them. Riley has a zest for learning and applying her new skills. She sees ways to help others, and she does so with a gentle, kind attitude and a positive effort. Her art is reflective of her strong efforts and colorful zeal. Judah is an outstanding individual with a natural gift to step up and help when needed without being asked. He has a unique, creative, artistic perspective which results in eye-catching products. Sophia is a student who displays natural leadership skills and enthusiasm for learning. Her active participation in class shows her outgoing personality and her willingness to share her ideas with others. If you are here to support these students tonight, please stand so we may honor you as well. And now all those who are able, please stand and join as our students lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, students. And now we'll continue. We'll now continue with honoring excellence by honoring the winner of the Arbor Day poster contest. Tonight, we are pleased to recognize that winner for the entire state of Missouri. Audrey Forston, would you please come forward? Audrey just completed the 5th grade at Truman Elementary School. Earlier this spring, she was one of more than 1,000 elementary students in the state to submit a design for the contest, hosted by the Missouri Community Forestry Council. To advance to the state competition, Audrey won first place in her school's contest, first place in the Springfield contest, and ultimately first place in the state of Missouri. She is the first SPS student to win at all 3 levels. Congratulations. Audrey's design reflected this year's theme, which is Trees Work for Our Backyard Friends. To commemorate her achievement, an oak tree was planted on the Truman campus during a special ceremony in May. Congratulations to Aubrey on winning the Missouri Arbor Day poster contest, and we want to get your photo with Dr. Lathan and Ms. Kincaid. Congratulations again. Earlier this year, a group of Springfield community members and SPS advocates made the commitment to serve as SPS ambassadors. This is the third group of individuals to participate in the SPS Ambassador Program. That program is a collaborative effort with the Foundation for Springfield Public Schools to engage with people who believe in public education and who support Springfield Public Schools. They have the opportunity to learn more about our school district, meet with key district leaders, and participate in several tours of our schools and programs. Tonight, we will recognize these individuals who have generously given of their time. But first, I would like to invite Natalie Murdoch, Executive Director of the Foundation for SPS, to come forward and share more details with you, and then we'll take a photo at the end with their certificates.
Thanks, Stephen. Thank you guys for having me tonight. It's wonderful to see these amazing ambassadors. So they spent the year with us learning more about Springfield Public Schools and more about the foundation, and they are ready to go out and be our cheerleaders in the community. And so that is exactly what this program is all about. I want to take a moment to thank you all, our ambassadors, for participating in this program. It truly is an honor to be able to get to know them and to work with them, and what a great partnership this is between Springfield Public Schools and the foundation. So I have some lovely certificates for you. So I'm going to call your name, and you're going to come up, and then when we're all done, we're going to take a quick group photo, and Stephen will direct us. So let's get started. I don't think Natalie Allen is here today. Alan Beauchamp, not here. Jessica Bauer, I don't think she's here. Phil Bridges, got Phil, thank you. Alexis Brown, don't think she was coming. Wes Buckholtz, thank you, Wes. Matt Campbell, yeah. Hannah Childs, Alexis Childs, might be our first mother-daughter combo, which we're very excited about. Deanna Diamond, she's here. Lori Edmondson.
We're gonna get out the picture. You're good.
No, you're good. You take your time. Addie Ferber. Ivy Fitzgerald. Don't think what's going to be able to be here. Lori Gossley. Lori. Brandy Harris was not going to be able to be here. Stephanie Lewis. Shelley Luke. Bethany Markle. Beth Mitchell. She was Grandpa Hank, I wouldn't try to pronounce your last name without just totally. So we just know you and love you as Grandpa Hank. Katie Phillips. She's here. Taryn Raydell was not going to be here. Melissa Ray. Thank you. Susan Smith. I think our last two might not be here. Anna Williams and Alice Wingo. I don't think they were able to be here. So this is really an outstanding group of individuals that truly believe in what we do in Springfield Public Schools, and we appreciate your time and are really proud that you all took the time to go through this program. So.
Let's come together just a little bit more, and if you don't mind to step forward, we'll create 2 rows. I think that might be better. Yeah, if we do 2 rows and fill in the back.
Hank, why don't we have you go to the back row and then close that gap a little bit. There we go. Oop. Let's get this. Okay. I'm going to take this at an angle. The microphone's in the way. Okay. Everybody looking right here.
And as we mentioned, this is the 3rd year of the SPS Ambassador Program. We will be opening up the application process for our 4th class in August, and we look forward to continuing this new tradition with SPS. Thank you again to all of you, and that concludes Honoring Excellence for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. That brings us to item 2.04, approval of agenda. Our recommended action is that the board approve the agenda as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Board Member Thomas Tate. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Board Member Bruner. We will go ahead and vote. The motion that the board approve the agenda passes 5-2, if I'm reading that correct. Yes. Okay, that moves us to item 3.01, public comments. The Board of Education welcomes the comments about the issues being discussed. The board uses this time in our meeting to listen to the public, but will not comment or engage with the public during this meeting. The board allows for up to 10 speakers per public comment period. The board president will call on individuals in the order in which they signed up. Substitutions are not permitted. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes and will be timed by the board secretary. Comments must be acceptable for a business and family-friendly environment. Inappropriate language, gestures, or personal attacks will not be tolerated. It's inappropriate to address the board about individual students or individual staff members by name in open meeting. If you have concerns about individuals, these concerns should be addressed through the appropriate administrative supervisors, either in the schools or the district office. If you have materials that you would like to share, please place them on the tray in the podium, and they'll be distributed to the board following the meeting. There'll be a timer on the screen to help you keep track of how much time you have left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This evening we have 7 speakers. Our first set of speakers is Cole and April Pierce.
Just Cole Pierce today. Okay. I stand before you today to address pressing concerns regarding our special education process. Our children are unique, each with their own set of needs and abilities, and it is our duty to ensure they receive the support they deserve. Firstly, the current practice of defaulting to 504 plans when an individualized education plan may be necessary is not in compliance with child fine laws. We must evaluate each child diligently to determine the most appropriate support, ensuring no child is left behind due to procedural oversight. Secondly, the IEP team's dynamic must evolve. Parents are integral to their child's development, yet they often feel sidelined. The team must foster a collaborative environment where parents' insights are valued, not just considered a formality. We must remember, we are not just a team by name, but by action, working towards the common goal of the child's well-being. Thirdly, the response time from special services and executive leadership to parental concerns is unacceptable. Parents should not be met with constant barriers of meetings and delayed responses. It is imperative that we improve our communication channels, ensuring parents can connect with leaders promptly when issues arise. Fourthly, Springfield Public Schools must strengthen partnerships with subject matter experts to educate our special service team on disabilities, particularly those less understood, such as auditory processing disorder. This knowledge is crucial for providing tailored support to each child under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Lastly, accountability is non-negotiable. When accommodations listed on an IEP are not followed, it is not only a disservice to the child, but a violation of federal law. Take, for instance, the case of my daughter's speech therapist who neglected to use the FM system during therapy, despite its inclusion on her IEP. Such disregard for established accommodations cannot be tolerated. In conclusion, we must uphold the rights of every child to receive an education that caters to their individual needs. It is our responsibility to ensure that the process, teamwork, leadership response, expertise, and accountability within our special education system are beyond reproach. Our children's futures depend on it. Thank you for your attention to this critical issue.
Thank you, Cole. Our next speaker is Dr. Mary Byrne.
As a follow-up to my last public comment, I'd like to make 2 points concerning the school board members' legal obligation to know and perform their duties and responsibilities according to Missouri law. The Missouri Constitution, RSMO 161.042 and RSMO 162.3011, as well as SPS board policies BBBA2 and BCA2, require board members to take an oath or affirm the Missouri Constitution. That Constitution specifies the purpose of public education. It states that public schools are provided for the preservation of the rights and liberties of the people. Article 9, Section 1A reads, "A general diffusion of knowledge and intelligence being essential to the preservation of the rights and liberties of the people, the General Assembly shall establish and maintain free public schools for the gratuitous instruction of all persons in the state within ages not in excess of 21 years as prescribed by law." Gratuitous instruction means given without return, benefit, or compensation. In other words, education is provided free of charge for the benefit of the individual. The school board member's oath of office also states, "Will faithfully demean myself in office." That is, you will humble yourself, putting the law above your own will or the will of your campaign supporters, while executing the duties and responsibilities of the office to which you were elected. In sum, the Missouri Constitution does not empower the General Assembly to provide public dollars for the formation of global citizens or a corporate workforce, but for the formation of a free citizenry educated to defend their individual rights and liberties. 2, SPS board members are obliged to perform their duties as per state law and their own school board policies. Missouri law RSMO 162.91 establishes penalties for the school board members who neglect or refuse to comply with school laws. It states any school board member who willfully neglects or refuses to perform any duty imposed on him by chapters 160 to 168 and others, or who willfully violates any provision of these chapters is guilty of a misdemeanor and on conviction shall be punished by fine of not more than $500 or by imprisonment in the county jail not to exceed 1 year. Note that chapters 160 to 168 includes RSMO 162.611, which mandates the local board of education establishes a written policy of discipline. To establish policy means to create it. No other agent is identified in the statute as having the authority to establish a district's discipline policy. Affirmation of the board's statutory duty to determine a written student discipline policy is found in Missouri DESE's website and SPS Board Policy JG. Missouri state law does not empower the superintendent to establish or modify existing written discipline policy. Board members are obliged to promulgate the SPS school discipline policy in writing or accept the consequences as prescribed in law.
Thank you, Mary. Our next speaker is Jasmine Allen.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jasmine Adelaida Allen. I am a teacher for the district as well as a parent. She's going to be a Central Bulldog next year. I came to speak to you guys about the 5 essential for workplace mental health and well-being. This came out in 2022, and I'm just going through some things that I felt you guys needed to be reminded. I've highlighted them, but protection from harm. You prioritize workplace physical and psychological safety. I feel like that's an area of growth. And you're going to normalize and support mental health. I am so thankful for the partnership with Borough. I hope that continues for our students. And then the EAP, that's also very positive for faculty and staff, however that runs out after 6. Maybe we can look for some further collaborations. One that I feel like we're lacking terribly is operationalize the DEI norms, policies, and programs, meaning diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. It varies building to building. I've been in various buildings, and you can tell when you walk in if you feel like you belong, if you matter, if you're seen. I'm going to move on now. I'm just going to leave this with the areas that I feel with connection and community. There's one, work-life harmony, mattering at work, and opportunity for growth. Now, I know that you guys are going to be talking about the cell phone policy. I ask you, have you guys spoken to parents, spoken to teachers? I know when I have problems with cell phones in the classroom, I first go to the families, see what's going on at home, like what's the expectation at home. This is the expectation in the classroom. It's a collaborative effort. And Dr. Murphy also came up with an advisory. Are we modeling, right? We can't just like, okay, one size fits all. I was pleased to hear that it's going to vary building to building, but it needs to be uniform across that building. But policymakers, which you guys are, it says you can support digital and media literacy. How are we equipping our teachers to support that? You know, I've known some teachers to actually use, like if we're doing Snapchat, let's Snapchat what we're reading, you know, integrate it. But it's just an idea. I'm going to leave this advisory with you guys if you guys haven't seen it. And I would like to thank you guys for your service. Pipkin, I am so pleased. That's the school I went to. Thankful for those launch teachers. My daughter's in launch this summer. They're doing amazing. I hope you guys have a good day.
Thank you, Jasmine. Our next speaker is Gregory Ben.
Good evening, my name is Gregory Benny, and I am here to share some thoughts on student use of cell phones. I teach at the middle level. This is an important issue for education. It is highly complex in terms of behavior management because these devices are now ubiquitous, and enforcement does initially fall on the shoulders of teachers at the classroom level. Currently, the student handbook seems to say 3 things about the normal use of cell phones, i.e. electronic devices. For elementary, on page 43, it confines cell phones to backpacks for the duration of the day. It references cell phones as electronic devices on page 26, which, quote, may be in the student's possession as long as they are not disruptive to the educational process or in violation of site use procedures, end quote. However, the handbook goes on to say on page 59 that turning on said phone and using it at all constitutes misuse unless authorized by site-specific procedure and provides a scope and sequence for violating that policy. So we essentially already have a ban on cell phones during the day with site-based exceptions. Not as strict at my level as NICS's total ban K-8, but with important allowances for things potentially like medical use or translating for non-English speakers, and maybe newspaper or yearbook photography or listening to music if you're doing independent work as established by sites. I think this is a workable policy. However, if the inappropriate use of cell phones is the huge distraction to learning we know it to be, and we're serious about this, our response to such behavior should be robust. We must recognize in the classroom that for some it is not minor, it is major. And it's the same kids over and over for me who cannot stop messaging their friends or stay off social media. I do spend considerable time wrangling cell phones back into pockets, as well as calling and partnering with parents about how to manage their child's cell phone usage. We need a full court press from the admin the first time on truly inappropriate cell phone usage, and yet we seem to be stuck in a pattern of warning and warning kids about such inappropriate behavior. Perhaps what we really have is an issue of enforcement rather than the need to create a new ban. At the very least, we need consistency within buildings and across the district building to building in terms of either enforcing the current policy with a process for approving site use or crafting something better. To be clear, as I am a watch person, I will always prefer to look at my wrist for the time, but I don't think punishing kids for checking the time on their phones is a good idea. Instead, I will teach you to read the analog clock on my wall so you can look up and better engage with the world and my wall clock. So, should you ask all your stakeholders how to move forward on this issue? Yes, you should, because kids need us to act in their best interests, especially when they don't. We have lots to share and want to be a part of the process. Please, let's work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory. Our next speaker is Laura Mullins.
Good evening. Okay. Earlier this month, we heard the board and superintendent discussing how to address the issue of student cell phones in the classroom. We were surprised and disheartened to see this topic was removed from tonight's agenda. As you may have seen, Nixa School District recently took a stand on the issue despite expected pushback for the well-being of the students. This came about from feedback from their teachers, something that SPS has not considered, nor were our teachers asked to be part of the committee to revise the disciplinary scope and sequence of the Code of Conduct covering cell phone use. Because of this, SNEA did ask for input. In a brief survey we conducted, over 75% of the 200-plus respondents were in support of a complete ban on cell phones during the school hours, something Nixa had already put in place for grades K through 8 before adding high school for the upcoming year. This ban was preferred in our survey over the other options of a site-based or classroom-based plan, primarily because this leads to inconsistency in policy application, a problem that feeds into the larger behavioral issues our educators face every day. An additional hurdle that SPS has created for itself is the implementation of the PBIS majors and minors chart. Currently, cell phone use is considered a minor issue that is supposed to be classroom managed as opposed to one that is to be addressed by the administration. While NICS's scope and sequence may look like ours, SPS students are given multiple steps of intervention before this behavior even makes it to step 1 of the code of conduct. These include things like a conference with the student, talking to the counselor, notifying the parent, or even creating a behavior plan. Only if these things fail are the students subject to an actual office referral, which would then be considered the first offense of the scope and sequence, which is just another conference, but this time with the principal. We have heard a couple of board members mention that if students violated the policy, this would be considered defiance and would be subject to a referral. Unfortunately, defiance is also considered a classroom managed behavior with the same red tape of steps. We do have schools at SPS that are successful with controlling cell phones, but they do this by making this an office-managed issue with consequences, much like the NICSA plan does. We often hear the concern of the teachers, quote, losing power by involving the administration. But what truly causes teachers to lose power is when students are allowed to repeatedly violate our policies because teachers are required to follow these majors and minors charts. The recent News Leader article stated NICSA is just one of a growing number of districts in Missouri making these changes. As the largest accredited district in Missouri, shouldn't we be setting the example for best practices? This can be done. And as always, SNEA is open to partnering with the SPS administration to resolve issues affecting our classrooms and our employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Our next speaker is Dr. Wes Zonker.
Good evening. Discipline continues to be at the forefront of discussions, and I think we can all agree that students and parents need to be accountable for students' inappropriate behavior. The question really is, accountable to who? Tonight, I'd like to focus on student accountability. Obviously, violations of the Safe Schools Act require immediate administrative action following due process, and the consequences are clear whether a student accepts responsibility for their behavior or not. But for the most frequent, and I'm looking mostly from an elementary perspective, the most frequent classroom disruptions, such as disorderly conduct, disrespect for authority, and defiance of authority, the students need to be accountable to the classroom teacher. That's who they need to be accountable to. When a student is sent to the office, I may work with them, they become compliant, I take them back down to the classroom, and they repeat the same behaviors. That's because in the office, they're accountable to me. In the classroom, they're not accountable to the teacher. So one of the things that I had asked teachers to do, I kind of looked at the student handbook, and teachers are encouraged to use a buddy room or a timeout before a referral to the office. Now, the timeout description in the handbook is a little bit different than what I perceived it because it's in another part of the building. But I would have teachers or encourage them to use a timeout within their classroom. If the students could not do a 5-minute timeout, sitting in a chair, quietly getting their thoughts together, and they were still creating a disruption, they could send them to a buddy room. If they continued to be disruptive in the buddy room, then they came to the office. And I worked with that student, and they had to complete that timeout in my office. Then I walked them back down to the buddy room, and they had to do the timeout in the buddy room. And I went back and I checked with the classroom teacher to make sure that they did it correctly. Then they went back to the classroom and did their timeout in the classroom. And what they learned is that they have to be accountable to that classroom teacher. The goal is to get them to sit for a timeout in the classroom appropriately. So administrators, we need to find ways to support teachers in holding students accountable. And I think that we can apply some of the same strategies even at the secondary level as to what we've heard before. Public schools educate everyone, and students can learn to be accountable. And if not public schools, then who? Who will teach them? Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Our final speaker this evening is Jeffrey Pettibone.
Good evening. I'm Jeffrey Pettibone, and I'll be the new Springfield MSTA president beginning on July 1st. I wanted to introduce myself and tell you a little bit more about MSTA. The Missouri State Teachers Association is a nonprofit organization. We're the largest teacher organization in the state of Missouri with over 43,000 members. We're the second largest school staff organization in the Springfield School District with just over 320 members district-wide. MSTA and our local Springfield MSTA, or CTA, Community Teachers Association, operate under a strict code of ethics, and I will have a bookmark for each of you with those. With that said, we hold ourselves to a high standard and work largely in the background so that we can get more accomplished for our members. With MSTA, if a member has an issue, we encourage them to contact our legal department directly or their member service coordinator rather than contacting the president or any other member first. We believe strongly in the confidentiality of our members. MSTA exists to advocate for and empower public educators so they can teach. We pride ourselves on our approach to collaboration and working toward resolutions with those in the district. As a result, we have regular meetings with our members and top school officials. Thus, we are well respected by our members and administrators. In Jefferson City, we're at the forefront of the fight for public education and its staff. Our focus is strictly on educational issues within the state of Missouri. Member dues are directly reinvested to support our public school staff. As a nonpartisan organization, we are dedicated to supporting and promoting public education and its staff. Our decisions are guided by this commitment. Each year, our members participate in a statewide convention where they choose adopted resolutions amplifying our voice at the Capitol. Furthermore, our Education Policy Committee sets priorities based on member feedback, ensuring our initiatives are aligned with the needs of our members. I look forward to seeing you at our board meetings, meeting each of you, and working with you to continue to improve Springfield Public Schools. Thank you for your time and dedication to public education.
Thank you, Jeffrey. That concludes our public comment portion of our meeting this evening. Brings us to item 4.0, consent agenda items. These items were presented to the board on June 11th, 2024 during our study session for review, and board members were given an opportunity to ask questions at that time, as well as additional information and questions answered by email. I will entertain a motion that the board approve consent agenda items 4.01 through 4.09.
So moved.
Motion from Board Member Thomas Tate. Do I have a second? Board Member Byrne?
Yes, I'd like to make a request that we remove item 4.01 from consent to be voted on its own.
Okay, there's been a request from Board Member Byrne that we remove item 4.01, approval of minutes, from the consent agenda. That doesn't require a vote, just a request from a board member, so we'll remove item 4.01. Do I have a motion that the board approve consent agenda items 4.02 through 4.09?
So moved.
Motion from Board Member Thomas Tate. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Board Member Bruner. And we will vote on the motion that the board approve consent agenda items 4.02 through 4.09. The motion that the board approve consent agenda items 4.02 through 4.09 passes 7-0. That moves us to item 4.01, approval of minutes. I will entertain a motion that the board approve the official minutes of the study session, June 11th, 2024. Motion from Board Member Thomas Tate. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Board Member Bruner. Any discussion on this item?
Yes, I think I'd like to request that a revision be made. Under 6.04, the language be added. It was acknowledged by the board president that language would be brought forth prior to the next meeting to vote on a policy for cell phone restriction.
Can you repeat that, please?
Under 6.04, the language be added. It was acknowledged by the board president that language would be brought forth prior to the next meeting to vote on a policy for cell phone restriction.
Okay, there's been a motion to revise the minutes dated June 11th of 2024. Do I have a second on the motion to revise?
I second that.
Okay, second from Board Member McCoskey. Is there any discussion on the motion to revise?
Can you read the language again?
I'm going to let Board Member Byrne read the language.
It was acknowledged by the board president that language would be brought forth prior to the next meeting to vote on a policy for cell phone restriction.
Is there any further discussion on Mr. Burns' motion to revise the minutes?
I'd like to add that in the meeting that I attended, I was specifically given the directive to work with Mr. Byrne on proposed language.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will take a verbal vote. Does it need?
You have to do a verbal.
Do verbal. Okay. Okay, roll call vote.
I'm trying to think back. That's not exactly how I remember it.
Get her microphone on.
Oh, sorry. That's not exactly how I remember it. My memory would have been, and perhaps I need to go back and watch it because I don't want to misstep here. But my memory was that it didn't seem that we had that the consensus as I was listening seemed that there was an agreement that cell phones were an issue and a serious one, but not to the level of creating a policy. That's how I remember it.
May I speak? I thought that one of the things that we ended up with was agreeing that it would be a point of emphasis, that the administrative wording in the handbook would be a point of emphasis. And I kind of remember that you and I looked at each other and went, point of emphasis. We need to make this. You and I agreed this was a point of emphasis. I kind of remember using those words, but Judy, I'm not opposed to going back and exactly listening to it. I thought that in keeping it within the handbook, we did not create, might I say, a policy that got us in a procedure that we weren't quite ready to handle. I'm only going to use Los Angeles as an example when they said we're going to ban cell phones, but we can't do it until we figure out how to do it. So right now, I thought that we had a very manageable handbook as a point of emphasis that, and Dr. Latham, I believe that part of your comments when you concluded with your superintendent things, that you mentioned that the administration was going to take care of this within building and making it more of a collaborative. The teacher, the principal, administration. This was going to be a policy that was all going to be tied together. Am I correct? I'm an old lady.
Yes, and I sent you a summary last week of some of the steps that we were going to take from an administrative standpoint, and then when we look at the site-specific procedures, but more so procedures from a high school standpoint versus K-8, well, the K-8s, because it will continue with what's in the handbook for those, because they are completely in the backpacks or out of sight during the school day.
Might I please? As my recollection is I believe Board Member Mohammed Khani was going to make a motion, and at that time, there was an interjection that between Board Member Byrne and Madam President, that before the next meeting that you two were to get together and have a discussion with regards to a policy, and that in this meeting that was to come to put on the agenda, and we were going to continue to further look at what a policy might look like with regards to the cell phone. That's how I recollect the last meeting, excuse me.
I'd like to make a second. Oh, go ahead. Nope. First round.
My only comment is that I don't have a recollection of the specifics, and so at this moment, I am not willing to vote to change what is here because I'm not clear.
Okay. I made a motion at the meeting. In fact, once we finish this round, I will make my own motion to amend the minutes to reflect that I did make a motion to adopt the student handbook as a board policy. I retracted it based on Mr. Burns' comment, and then I looked at you, Madam President, and you gave me after we were instructed to work on the verbiage, I reiterated it so that it would be clear, crystal clear. I said, so I have the directive to work with Mr. Byrne. The board has directed me to do this, to work on this, and it was indicated yes.
And I have not received any language for a proposed policy. And Board Member Byrne, you and I spoke this afternoon, and I acknowledge that I should have followed up with you last week. I drafted an email and did not hit send, but that your request to add cell phones to the agenda for tonight's topic was not one that Vice President Bruner and I were inclined to entertain. And I indicated to you that I'm not saying that it shouldn't be on a future agenda, but I was never provided a policy. I was provided a draft motion, which I did not put on the agenda. The agenda was approved by this board 5-2 earlier this evening. So that's where we're at. I was hopeful, and Board Member Byrne, I indicated this to you, I was hopeful that we could work together outside of the board. I told you 2 weeks was not enough time, and that I wanted to run it by legal counsel. So I don't have a policy. I do remember that interaction and that you two were going to work together. Where's the policy?
Mr. Byrne, did you not send the email that?
I received a motion to direct our superintendent to work with legal to draft a policy, which I did not think was appropriate.
As I recall, there were two options because we felt, and correct me, Mr. Byrne, if I'm misspeaking for you, we felt that we didn't want to tie the hands, we didn't want to micromanage, so we gave two options, one which reflected Missouri School Board Association policy, and then what's in our handbook as options to draft a policy.
And it was my understanding that you all were going to draft the policy and get it to us. And instead I received a request to add a motion to the agenda. And I'll go back and watch the meeting.
Well, I stand on my motion.
Okay. We have a motion from Board Member Byrne to revise the official minutes of the Springfield Board of Education study session dated June 11th. Any further discussion, or does a board member need the motion read in full?
Yes, I'd like to speak on this.
What's going on with the timer? Okay. Go ahead, Board Member Byrne.
So to clear up some of this, it was discussed at the meeting on June 11th that, Miriam is correct, it was discussed in the June 11th meeting that language would be worked out between the two of us, and it was acknowledged by the board president that language would come back in front of the board for this meeting. On June 16th, I sent a reminder to the board president and vice president to add a place on the agenda. This would have been prior to the board officers meeting. The email said that there would be, to hold a place on the agenda as we discussed, and that language would be following. We met in person, Danielle and I, on the 18th. Another reminder was given. At that time, I was told, well, I don't know that we're going to put this on the agenda because it's for vote, and that's different than a discussion. And when I said the standard process, as we've talked about numerous times, was that by request, an item would be placed on the agenda, I was told that it was different when it was for a vote, which is news to me. I sent another reminder on June 20th. Now the agenda had come out without this being on it. Sent another reminder on the 20th with what I thought was very reasonable language to help ease concerns about voting on a direct policy. The language was that we vote to authorize and direct the superintendent to spend the next 2 months working on language to come back to us in August with for a vote. That email was never acknowledged. Neither was the prior email with the reminder for it to be on the agenda. So I was left with 2 emails ignored or not responded to, even though on 4 separate occasions I went through the process to get this on the agenda. So I was left with motioning tonight, and in the beginning of this meeting, I was unable to do so because a motion happened so lightning fast to not allow me to amend the agenda before it was motioned and seconded. So here we are. I think it's important to set the record straight that in the last meeting, it was acknowledged by the board president, and that's what this motion is about. We don't have to flush out the entire cell phone conversation here. That can come later. But I do think that it is important to acknowledge as part of this process on 4 different occasions that I reminded this to be placed on the agenda, and with a failure to do so and a total failure of communication until 3:45 today, which was basically, sorry, we didn't provide public notice. I'm not sure whose fault that is, certainly not mine, because I gave 4 different opportunities over the last 3 weeks to do so. So I do think it's important to actually just be factual in the minutes of what happened, and that's all that I'm asking. So in terms of this particular motion that I've made, all we're asking to do is factually represent the minutes from the last board meeting.
I'd like to close the debate and call for the question. I don't know that we're going to solve anything other than what has been said. I think we're going around in circles at this point. Madam President, may I call the question?
There's been a motion to call the question, ending debate on the motion to amend the official minutes. Do I have a second on closing debate?
I'll second that.
Second from Board Member McCoskey. I'll take a verbal vote on this to close the question. Board Member Byrne.
Aye.
Nay.
To close the question.
Oh, aye.
Okay. It's okay. Aye. And chair votes aye. The motion to close the question passes 7-0. That leads us to the vote on the motion for the amendment, Mr. Burns' motion to revise the June 11th official minutes. Vote in favor would pass Mr. Burns' amendment. And again, we'll take another verbal vote. Board Member Byrne.
Aye.
No.
No.
And chair votes no. Motion fails 4-3. That leads us to voting on the official minutes of the Board of Education, June 11th, 2024, as presented. We will take another verbal vote on this. A vote in favor would accept the study session minutes as drafted. Board Member Byrne.
No.
Aye.
And Board President votes aye. Motion passes 4-0. Or, I'm sorry, 4-3. That leads us to new business, item 5.01. Oops, compensation plans. Our Deputy Superintendent of Operations, Dr. Shaw, will join us at the podium.
Good evening, Board. As part and requirement through both board policy and Missouri statute, it is required that the board vote and adopt salary schedules each year. You've approved the budget as part of consent. Another piece of that consent that you approved was also the collective bargaining agreements, which represent a tremendous amount of work and hours that went into not only language within those agreements, but also the salary schedules that you see in front of you. The equivalent of a step and a 3.5% COLA was applied to approximately applied to the salary schedules. I say it in that way because unlike some years, this year looked very different in how the COLA was applied, and that was really around what the different groups wanted and how they chose to apply that, whether it be on the front end, the back end, or spread throughout evenly. And so the simplest way to describe that is that the equivalent of a step on their scale plus a 3.5% COLA, give or take, was applied to these salary schedules. This does bring our teacher base salary schedule to $44,972, which will be the highest in the region continually, ahead of Joplin by a few $100s, which is something that we strive to do, to be at the top. It also puts a top end salary on the teacher salary schedule at $81,929. This is, as a reminder, it represents an addition of approximately $12.2 million in added compensation for the next year's budget, which is a tremendous commitment that you all as a board have voted on and approved to keep our salary and compensation packages where they need to be. And also attached to board docs is a document that shows all of the different changes in regards to specific positions, whether they be deleted or changed to classification or potentially added positions that are also represented within that salary schedule. Are there questions that you may have at this time?
Are there any questions for Dr. Shaw? Okay. Thank you. We'll entertain a motion that the board approve the 2024 to 2025 salary schedule as presented.
So moved.
Motion from Board Member Thomas Tate. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Board Member McCoskey, and we will vote. Motion that the board approve the salary schedule as presented passes 7-0. Moves us to item 5.02, the Grant Avenue Parkway expansion easement. And Mr. Dilday will join us this evening. Okay.
Yes, you have 4.
So good evening. Before you this evening is the Grant Avenue Parkway expansion. This is temporary construction easements, utility easements, and permanent road right-of-way deed to the city of Springfield for Campbell Early Childhood Center property. This is all part of the Grant Avenue updates and improvements, so just need a motion to approve as presented.
Okay. Thank you. Hang in there with me. I will entertain a motion that the board authorize and approve a temporary construction easement, utility easement, and permanent road right-of-way deed to the city of Springfield at Campbell Early Childhood Center property for the Grant Avenue Parkway Improvement Project. The president of the board is authorized and directed to execute the easement's permanent right-of-way deed and all other documents required to complete this transaction on behalf of the district.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we'll take a motion from Board Member McCoskey and a second from Board Member Thomas Tate. Any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, we will vote. The motion passes 7-0. Moving on to the Carver Stream Buffer easement.
Another easement. So this is a stream buffer easement at Carver Middle School. It's granting a perpetual variable width permanent stream buffer easement to run under and over through the real property at Carver Middle School on Battlefield Road. Again, just need a vote of the board to approve this easement.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion that the board authorize and approve granting a perpetual variable width permanent stream buffer easement to run over, under, and through the real property at Carver Middle School, 3325 West Battlefield Road in Springfield, to the city of Springfield, and to authorize president of the board to execute the stream buffer easement on behalf of the district. Okay. Motion from Board Member Thomas Tate. Do I have a second? Second from Board Member McCoskey. Any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, we will vote. And the motion on the easement passes 7-0. Moving us on to item 6.01.
All right. So before you in your board packet is the agreements and change orders for all bond projects for this board meeting. Total is $50,521.67. Is there any questions?
Do I have a motion that the board approve the expenditures as presented?
So moved.
Motion from Board Member McCoskey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Board Member Thomas Tate. Any further discussion? Okay, we will vote. The motion carries 7-0. Final item for you this evening, school bus security camera update.
Bringing it home. So the Transportation Technology Departments have evaluated school bus security camera solutions over several months to determine functionality and needs. It is recommended to adopt the solution provided by Safety Vision LLC. The solution will upgrade all school buses to the desired standard of 8 security cameras on each bus, onboard video recording and viewing, and wireless upload of security footage. The solution utilizes existing equipment that meets the current standard. This total is $575,139.12. Any questions I can answer?
Do I have a motion that the board approve the agreements as presented?
So moved.
Who was that? Was that your motion from Board Member Thomas Tate, second from Board Member Provance? Any further discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. The motion carries 6 in favor, 1 abstention. Okay, that brings us to item 7.01, Superintendent's update.
Yes, good evening, board members. The first 4 weeks of Explore will wrap up this week. Students have had the opportunity to participate in field experiences like the Nature Center, Vital Farms, Lost Hill Park, Care Animal Rescue, and the Butterfly House. Of course, today and tomorrow, Clifford the Big Red Dog, he's been out visiting today. We had 9 sites today, he did, and he will continue tomorrow to visit some additional sites. Summer learning will continue July 8th through August the 2nd for students who enrolled in virtual Explore classes. To help support our students and their families, we are launching Ready, Set, Supply. That's our annual campaign to collect school supply donations. Information can be found on our district website. We are less than a month away, we're about a little bit over a month away from our Back to School Bash. It will be held on Saturday, July 27th at the Expo Center. Remember, this is a great time to come out and welcome our families and get everyone prepared for the first day of school, which is Monday, August the 19th. Board members, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. Moves us to item 8.01, board member comments. Do we have any comments from board members this evening?
I'd like to thank Dr. Latham. I'd like to thank the leadership team. I would like to thank everyone that was involved, but especially appreciate the salary, all the steps, all the benefits for the teachers. I know this is, we have to maintain our teachers. We have some of the best teachers, and I feel that you provided them something that they can go home and smile with. This is going to help them in the classroom as well. Thank everyone for that.
Further board member comments?
I have a few things. I had the privilege of attending, along with a few other board members, the Missouri School Boards Association Summer Summit yesterday, and I learned some interesting things. I learned, and I'd heard this before, but I was reminded of what are some of the differences of people sitting up at the board table as well as those in the audience. And the speaker gave us what she called a generational decoder card, which outlined how baby boomers, like me, like Coach Provance down there, how we think and what is important to us. She also talked about Gen Xers and millennials and Gen Zs and how we approach and problem solve differently, and how we not always think differently, but how we approach things is kind of how I took it. But it was very interesting information in terms, and I, of course, was thinking in terms of our board and how what each of us brings to the table. And then I also thought about my student teachers out there that think differently than I do sometimes. I attended a session on AI that I found frightening and interesting all at the same time. But I thought it was well worth it. It seems that just like, well, I don't know if you feel like I do about it, but we're just on the cusp of some really interesting things in our history as far as that's concerned. But I did learn some things, and what I really learned was that I have a whole lot more that I need to learn about it. Thank you. I will reiterate what Board Member Provance said. Thank you to all that were involved in collective bargaining. I know that took a lot of time from some individuals, perhaps more than others, but everybody put their heads together and collaborated. And it's never enough, but it's what we can do, and I think it's a good faith effort, and so I appreciate all the work that went into that. So that's what I have to say.
Further comments?
Is someone about to make a comment? I'll have one when
Sorry.
my time is
Do you want
ready.
to go? Okay.
Board member Muhammad Khani was going to make a comment.
It's okay, he can go first.
Okay, she's indicated you can go first.
Okay. I wanted to speak to the email that we received from Dr. Lathan as a follow-up to our last meeting that regarded some student handbook language changes. I was very excited when I saw this email. Just the whole idea that we had a discussion, and then Dr. Lathan and her staff took it upon themselves to follow up from that discussion to give us some anticipated changes as we moved into the next year based off of kind of that discussion and where they decide to go to put us in a better position for next year. Very excited about that. I'm excited about in particular with the elementary and the middle school level, from a procedural perspective of reinforcing the language that we already have in our handbook. I think those are good steps in the right direction. However, when it comes to the language for high schools, to me, this is going in the opposite direction of what I would want to see, what I've been pushing for. I'm just one board member. I would hope that as collectively as a board member that we could steer towards something that would serve to greatly remove the cell phones from the learning environment. the language that was given as it relates to high schools actually contradicts the student handbook language currently and makes it softer or easier for students in high school to use their cell phones in school. I don't think that that's the right direction. And this isn't, I hope that we can understand that this is I mean this completely professionally. We can have disagreements on the right course of action. I agree with part of it, I disagree with the other part of it, which is what leaves me at this juncture to try everything I can to try and get the board to come up with a policy. Because our superintendent handles procedure. She handles the student handbook and the interpretation of that. I think we are at a point here where the board needs to create policy to be more clear about what we want to accomplish regarding cell phones in our school district. So, as I continue to listen and adapt and do everything I can to try and move us in the right direction or give us the opportunity to do so, I will make a motion that we hold a special meeting at some point within the next 2 weeks to discuss cell phones in the learning environment with the intention of arriving on a policy for their restriction.
Board Member Byrne has made a motion for a special meeting within the next 2 weeks to discuss cell phones and the learning environment and arrive at a board policy discussing their restriction. Did I hear that? Okay. It's been a motion. Do I have a second?
I would second that motion.
Okay, there's a second from Board Member McCoskey. Is there further discussion before we vote?
I have discussion on that. I have concern that our board and perhaps our community don't agree on the language, and for me, language is important, or definitions, let's say that, of what policy is and what it does. And I understand policy to provide a set of guidelines that help to reflect the district's mission and values, whereas our procedures, which are outlined in the student handbook, are those that can be enforced in day-to-day interactions. I am opposed to policy that is attempting to micromanage the authority of our superintendent and administrators to perform their duties in effective ways. We don't currently, I think that some of the challenges that we have, which I think has been reiterated by many, including those who have spoken here in other places, that part of the challenge that we see in the classroom is with enforcement. And enforcement of these procedures in the classroom at the policy level, I believe to be problematic. So I am not sure that we're ready to have that particular meeting to address these particular policies, given that we have current procedures that stand that are not being enforced. I do not believe that having a policy that is in our policy bank is going to increase the enforcement of currently held procedures that are currently already available, and that for many of our board has already agreed outline what we want to see happen. I think that I was hearing things like we want something to have teeth in it. Well, that is a authority issue where we want to have that particular handbook have authority. Our policy is to help shape and frame our mission and values and around those things. And if we want to have a policy that talks about our mission and values regarding cell phones, that's fine, but I would not like to see one that does the scope and sequence of actions to be taken against students and/or teachers who follow the procedures that are outlined in the student handbook.
Any further discussion on Board Member Burns' motion for a special meeting within 2 weeks?
If I may.
Sure.
I hear what you're saying, Board Member Tate. And you're right, in my opinion, you would be right in some areas that we need some adjustment in what you spoke. For an example, I think it's relative and it's important that the board does make policy. And this is a topic and a subject matter that I think actually willingly we should deserve an opportunity to have further discussion so we don't make a rash decision here necessarily, whether we have a policy or not. And if it's just going to be the handbook and the suggestions that Dr. Lathan had made, how that might work out to be able to provide some direction for the members, the principals, and then the school district. I have I have a paper full of statistics and data that I'm not going to get into tonight because I want to share that in a special meeting, that I think this calls for a special meeting. I think cell phones in themselves within the district is causing a lot of our problems. And a lot of our problems can be solved by actually having a specific policy that we can help guide our superintendent to enact and enforce within the schools. Regarding the schools having various policies or making their own policy or something, I'm not necessarily in favor of that. I think what that does is it actually causes confusion. And by causing confusion, it means that we're going to continue to have many problems that I perceive or I learn from talking to educators and community and parents. And I just feel it's necessary at this juncture that this board, which is our responsibility, is to build policy, not micromanage. I don't perceive it at that. I think we have a duty and a responsibility to ensure that this policy would support the mission statement, as Dr. Tate was just explaining, excuse me. And so I would be in favor. That's why I second the motion that we have a special meeting. I think this is good cause to have a special meeting. And we can debate then whether we're going to have a policy or we're just going to allow some provisions or procedure in a handbook to be adjusted. I do think that if we do the latter, that we're still going to continue to have the problems because you're going to have different policies at different schools, and therein lies our problem that we've been having over the years. And so therefore, I think policy is a prudent measure at this juncture, and I want to have that special meeting so we can have further discussion. And I'd just love to share all the ideas and concepts after the research that I've done throughout the United States and even in schools that are foreign schools, like in Finland and the Netherlands and in England and things like that. I've done quite a lot of research on this. It's very tiresome. It works on you. And I think that some data and information that we need to hear in order to make a good, sound decision to build a policy specifically for this cell phone issue that we're having within the school system. Thank you.
Any further board member discussion on Board Member Burns' motion for a special meeting?
Yes.
Is he coming back? Did he want to, what did he say?
You said yes.
Did you
Yes,
have?
I
Okay.
have discussion.
Okay,
I would like to discuss.
go ahead.
But he already went, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
did he?
sorry.
Board Member Byrne, can we give the other board members a chance to comment before we come back to you?
That's okay, go ahead, I want to hear what he says.
Yeah, it's just hard from this position to know if we're going to move on or not. So yeah, just whenever you're ready, I'm ready.
Okay. Board Member Mohammed Khani, did you have a comment?
Yes. Okay, so we're on round one. Okay. We're on round one of
We
his
are
motion, not on
correct.
comments.
Correct.
And Mr. McCoskey, I would like to hear about the research you've done in other countries. I know that in the States, what Mr. Byrne is suggesting is not all that terribly unique, right? There are many other districts and a growing number of districts with policies in many states that now have laws on the books. And I jotted a few of them: Florida, Indiana, Ohio. Then there are others that are actively pushing their legislative bodies, their governors, their boards of education, and those are Alabama, Utah, California. So these are really diverse states. There's many. Did you just mouth Oklahoma? Okay, there you go. And thank you, Susan, for mentioning LA Unified School District. I know everybody's probably seen that on the headlines. They are the second largest district in the country. I admit I was really hoping that would be us. So we have talked about this subject for a long time now. This has been on the burner for some time. And for those of us with school-age children who've been sounding the alarm on the negative effects of screen addiction and social media addiction and digital addiction in general and its devastating effect on the self-worth and mental health of children, it is quite a relief, is it not, Mr. Byrne, that it is now, we get to finally see the widespread societal awareness. We all know that cell phones go way beyond being a distraction to the educational environment. They interfere with the development of children. It threatens their childhood. It threatens their innocence, and at times the very life of our students. So we do have this opportunity to make a monumental difference in the lives of our students. And it's not often, Susan, this is my second term, but it's your third month. It's not often that we have this opportunity to make, to do something that really impacts our students, not just their academic outcomes, but their lives, their life circumstances. And it's not just in our district, but this could resonate throughout the state. We are the largest district. So we could essentially be the leaders in our state. Anyway, I think that I'm so filled with hope at this moment, at this motion that's on the table. I just think that we will look back on this vote, on this decision, knowing that, and I hope that we look back and we think that we acted with courage, because we know there's a lot of challenges. As you mentioned with Los Angeles, we know how much work is going to go into it. We know what a tough fight it's going to be, but we also know what a strong stance it is to protect children. And I want to look back at this moment with relief that we did the right thing and not with regret. I know that I'm really fortunate to be sitting in this seat. This was what the campaign was all about. It was building to this moment, to be able to vote on moving such a resolution forward and to be able to offer the encouragement to you all about this hope that I feel. So, Susan, it is your third month. You get to make a really big difference. All that work during the campaign, I feel, was for such a time as this. There are a lot of parents, a lot of staff that are depending on you. If you're going to break the 3-4 split vote, I think that this is the time.
Okay, any further board member comments? Okay. Sorry, Board Member Bruner is going to speak.
It's
Okay,
me,
thank you.
Kelly.
Sorry, yeah.
It is hard sitting out there.
Yes, yes.
And I'm getting in position here, so don't start my time just yet. As I listen to all of the comments, and I do appreciate them, what I hear is that we agree more than we disagree. That's what I hear. I don't disagree that, or I believe that we can all rally around protecting children, and I would add to that, rally around protecting learning, because that benefits the kids as well. there is something, and it's not just in education, but we are bound by what's called scope of employment. Educators get scope of employment from contracts, from directives and emails, from directives given in a faculty meeting, and we're held to that. That is part of our scope of employment. It can also come from policy, but it doesn't have to come from policy. We operate under the direction of our supervisors, and that's part of our scope of employment. And that is a legal obligation that we have, policy or no. It's scope of employment. I've talked to people and asked directly, is a policy needed for this? Do you need a policy to get this fixed? And the people that I'm hearing from, although I will grant you there would probably be a variety of opinions on this, the people that I'm hearing from say, we don't need policy. It was much better last year based on the direction given by supervisors. And the hope is that it will continue to get better with the emphasis that not only the community is putting on us, but that this board is putting on us. I'm reminded, Board Member McCoskey, of you at the first retreat that I was at, where you wanted to establish, I believe, a norm at that time that board members could not get out a cell phone during the meeting. The norm we didn't adopt it as a norm, but what I will tell you is your intent was a success. I wouldn't anymore get out my cell phone in this meeting or in any meeting, honestly, based on the discussion that happened that night, but I didn't think I don't even remember how I voted, but I don't think I thought it needed to be a norm, but you made your point. And I think we're making a point here tonight and every night that we've had these discussions. My opinion, we have what we need. We're given direction from the supervisors. They need to enforce the policy if they have it, but the practices and procedures and all that comes under scope of employment. So let's enforce what we have. People in the buildings tell me it was markedly better last year, even though they admitted that come third quarter, there more reminders needed to go out because people got a little lax with it. But the reminders went out and it went better. So when I ask directly, do you need policy? I'm told by the people I've talked to, we don't need policy. We like the direction we're going. We've made a huge difference, and it's our intent to keep getting better. And I think we have that leadership with what Dr. Lathan is proposing. And again, it comes under scope of employment, policy or not.
Further board member comments? Did you have one? Sure. Okay. I'll just briefly comment before we turn it over to you, Board Member Byrne, that Judy said it way better than I could, so I'm not going to repeat, but I agree wholeheartedly that we all 7 of us acknowledge that there's room for improvement as it relates to cell phone in the classrooms. I shouldn't just say all 7. We're a team of 8, and Dr. Lathan has been working on this for a while, and let it be known, to all the educators and parents and guardians and students out there, under no uncertain circumstances, this board absolutely supports an increase of enforcement as it relates to cell phone usage in the classroom. But to Vice President Bruner's point, I don't know that it rises to a level of a board policy. So, Board Member Byrne, you have the floor.
Thank you. So to speak to some of the comments, it's been said that it's an enforcement issue and it doesn't need to be policy. Yet, I disagree. It's not happening. I mean, maybe you can say it's getting better, but I would say it's getting better where? Maybe in some schools it is, but it's not in others. It's certainly not consistent from one to the other. So if it's an enforcement issue, who's not enforcing it? Are we blaming this on the teachers? Are we blaming this on the principals? Are we blaming this on admin, on Dr. Lathan herself? Who is not enforcing it? Because it's not working. So what do we have as a board if it's not working? We have policy. So what's the harm in having policy? If we say, well, we don't need a policy, well, tell me why not? What is the harm in making it policy? And we have a very good example from the MSBA, who we adopt almost everything they put in front of us. So I don't understand the logic and the reasoning. I don't understand what seems to be worry, concern, fear of voting on this to make it policy. I have been shut down at every opportunity just to vote on it, which is so strange to me. What I sent on June 20th, President Kincaid, I'll share now, since this was not disseminated to all of us. And this is what I would propose at a special meeting. I don't want to do a special meeting, but we could have done this tonight. It's only 7 and we're about to wrap up the meeting. This would have been a great opportunity. We have 2 months before our next meeting. This would have been a great opportunity to set Dr. Lathan off and then to come back in August with something that we can all have time to digest and vote on. But we didn't hit that mark. That's why I'm asking for a special session, unfortunately, within the next 2 weeks, so that we can still set Dr. Lathan and her team off to come back, to come up with a policy that we can agree on as a board collectively between the superintendent and the board, so that everyone in the district knows what our stance is on this and that it is not to fluctuate and change. So here's what I sent. Last week I requested we reserve a place on the agenda for a vote on creating a cell phone policy with the policy language to follow. I would like to request that the action be: the school board hereby authorizes and directs Dr. Lathan, in conjunction with school attorneys and the MSBA, to draft policy language regarding student cell phone use. A policy is to be created similar to the 2 attached examples, the goal of which will be to eliminate the display or use, not a ban, of cell phones on all campuses during the school day. The draft policy is to be presented to the board for vote at the August 20th, 2024 school board combined meeting. This is the language I would request a vote on in the special session that I've motioned for. The 2 examples that I provided are the student handbook language, which is the use of an electronic communication device such as a cell phone or a similar device is prohibited during the school day. This policy will be violated if the device is turned on or used during the school day, unless authorized by a site-specific procedure. The use of a device will occur if the device is in the on position and/or if voice, text, photo, or video messaging takes place during the school day. The district is not responsible for lost, damaged, or stolen devices. That is modified slightly to take out some of the antiquated language. The other example is modified from the MSBA language, which removes some of the scope and sequence that Dr. Thomas Tate was worried about. For students, Springfield Public Schools prohibits using, displaying, or turning on phones or other personal electronic communication devices during the regular school day, including class change time, meal times, or instructional class time, unless the use is part of the instructional program required by a district-sponsored class or activity or otherwise permitted by the building principal. So I'm requesting that we have a special session to discuss these things, to hopefully provide some clear direction to our administration, to Dr. Lathan and her team, to allow them time, 6 weeks, to come back to us in August with some language that we can all agree on, that has teeth to it, that makes it policy. That is the next step forward. Instead of nickel and diming this and losing a battle, this is the next step forward, and we can do it together.
Board Member Provance.
Kelly, Miriam, Steve, there is something that I very strongly agree with you on, and you have brought to the forefront that excessive cell phone use is not healthful for our kids. We all agree. Everyone agrees it is a distraction to learning. We also agree that with the many hours spent on it, this increases anxiety. There is nothing good that helps the mental health of a child who can't leave that cell phone. So bringing it to the forefront is very good. I think that We're not going to get consensus with all the parents, but I think that it's something that the schools and the parents need to get a little bit closer on the same page. I was at the new member of the school board at the Missouri school board meetings just today, and they talked about the difference between a policy and procedures and advantages and disadvantages of both. They said that a policy is something that's going to live long past your term. And I kind of looked at that as this is something that could put us in a corner. I don't want to be in a corner. The procedures are things that we, when I say we, sorry, we're all on a team here, that Dr. Latham, you pass down to principals, principals pass down to teachers. I like that idea of teamwork. I think it brings teachers and principals closer together. I think that we say that we look at the teacher and say, you must be accountable for doing this. But then we need to look at the principal and say, you need to be accountable for doing this too. And so I feel very strong about having that area that we work together on procedure. All right, there was something else that I really wanted to point out, and that was a policy could put us in a corner that we don't want to be. Cell phones are not going away. Cell phones are essential. They're essential to our jobs. Oh wait, our students are employed. Our students need that. I've always heard, well, a parent needs to be able to reach their child if there's an emergency. Well, wait. We have students that are parents. They just got a phone call from daycare. Their child threw up and is running a temperature and they need to pick them up. We have students that they got to find a place to sleep tonight. So they're calling buds to find out if they got a couch. I mean, we have students from A to Z, and I just don't think a policy is going to best suit all of them, but I think that classroom teacher is going to be able to look at those students and do what's best for the individual. And if that individual needs to be sent to the office where they can make a phone call on their cell phone, it's an emergency. Is that not the best what's for the child? I just think a policy is going to lock our 25,000 kids under one rule. I also think that if that student is honest with the teacher and says, I live with my grandmother. My grandmother fell. They took her to the hospital. I don't have my grandmother. I don't have a place. What type of bond when that teacher confronts that student and says, you betcha, it's the most important thing that's happening today is your welfare, is your grandmother's welfare. So I just believe that the teachers, the principals, and the administration, with the board's help, can master procedures that will be our best policy. And if we don't see the improvements that we want to see, we can always go back. But a policy is going to be written, and the way the Missouri School Board said, it's going to long outlive you. So do you think you can write it perfectly? Enough said.
Thank you. Board Member Thomas Tate.
I don't want to prolong this because I don't know that we're solving anything at this particular moment. And, it's the airing of the grievances. But I just want to take issue with this idea that this is one of the few opportunities that this board has to make a difference or to make substantive change or whatever language was used. That it's a false statement and that we make decisions on a regular basis that are important and that we have the opportunity to make important substantive changes that impact our students and our teachers and staffs and families on a regular basis. This was not something that I campaigned on. I do recognize the importance of it. I do think it's an important topic. And I think it's also a false statement, Kelly, that that you've been shot down at every opportunity. I think this is a nuanced conversation that needs a nuanced solution, and these black and white all or none statements are not something that I can get with. That does not mean that I don't think that we have an opportunity to do something. I just don't know that what you want to do is what we all want to do. I think that we do want some solutions and that we do want to make some changes, but I don't agree with your methods. And me not agreeing with your methods doesn't mean that I don't agree that it's not important, nor that I'm just trying to shoot you down. And you know this to be true because I've tried to have conversations about that with you. Nonetheless, I just am. I take issue with the false statements being made that it's just, certain people who care about these issues or who want to make change. That's not true. There are just different ways to approach it, and I want to be able to do it in a way that works for all of us and not one that just worked for those who campaigned on it.
Board Member McCoskey, did you have any further?
Thank you, I appreciate it. Tonight we had the NEA come up and talk, Springfield NEA come up and talk about 75% of the teachers polled wanted to remove cell phones from the classroom. I most recently learned that 70% of SPS teachers, and that's my own poll, want teachers or the cell phones to be removed from the classroom. The National Center of Education Statistics reported that 77% of U.S. schools prohibit students using cell phones in a non-academic manner. In 2023, the state of Florida made the use of cell phones in school a violation of state law. In Flint, Michigan, students are banned from cell phones in school largely in the name of safety. Proponents cite the benefits of phone-free schools for young people's academic and social-emotional well-being. The same was found in countries like England, Finland, France, Netherlands. I'm getting cotton mouth here, sorry about that. Most recently, California's Governor Gavin Newsom called for a ban on smartphone use in California schools in a national effort to curb cyberbullying and classroom distractions by limiting access to the devices. Jeremy Engel of the New York Times wrote a story of Orlando Schools District new policy, which bars students from using cell phones during the entire school day. Student engagement increased. Timber Creek, Florida school claimed phone-related school incidents like bullying have decreased. An educator of Timber Creek School said students make eye contact to respond when he greets them. Teachers and students seem to be more engaged. Another teacher claims students are more talkative and more collaborative. Other states like Ohio, Indiana, Florida ban cell phones in classrooms, with New York and Oklahoma considering banning cell phones from schools statewide. Local Nixa School District will remove cell phones in 2024 from K through 8 and limit the use of cell phones in the classroom for high school students. The author and social psychologist Jonathan Haidt, PhD, writes in his book, The Anxious Generation, which was handed to each board member, which I had the opportunity, I didn't get through the whole thing, it's too much to read right now, argues that increased rates of mental illness in teens can be partially attributed to increased cell phone use. Case after case, schools throughout the United States are prohibiting cell phone devices in schools. Why aren't we? The return of this investment into students or their students' futures, our student academic performance dramatically improved, discipline issues decreased significantly, student attendance increased, social emotional learning enhanced, and the student personnel interactions thrive. Now, to me, if you take the mission statement, SPS is committed to the well-being of each student by providing high-quality performance, which is part of our strategic plan. Every one of these people are doing just that. Why aren't we? Why are we leaving it to where we've had a problem? Well, some will actually enforce a policy and some will not. I think by having a policy sets the stage that everyone will follow policy, and if they do not, they will be held to account. That's the difference. What we're saying right now, that I don't see what a policy will do, I think the effectiveness of a policy is that it will eliminate a lot of the issues that we're having right now, and that is, we got one school doing one thing, another school doing another thing. Even in the schools, one classroom's doing something different, and another school's doing something different, another classroom. I think the bottom line here is if you looked at some of these schools that may enforce or have a policy with regards to the use or not use of cell phone policies, you'll probably see academic performance in that school that stops the use of cell phones go up. You'll probably see disciplinary issues go down. You'll probably see a lot of the social emotional relationships and skills improve within our students. Isn't that what our strategic plan wants? Isn't that what our strategic plan is supposed to reach? And therefore, I believe at this juncture that a policy will set the stage moving forward for the betterment of all students and our school district. Thank you.
Board Member Mohammed Khani, did you have any further comments?
Mr. Byrne, I think you got the discussion you wanted, and it appears that you'll get by proxy the vote. It's how I'm interpreting it. So I wouldn't be so gung-ho about this policy, especially after hearing Dr. Lathan at the conclusion of the last meeting, if it weren't for the follow-up email we received that basically moved us backwards. So now we have procedures that are more lax, more permissive in the high school setting. And I think the crux of the issue here is that we have a board composition and a board majority that absolutely refuses to ever not be 1,000% aligned with the superintendent. That's just this board, right? This is the board that doesn't direct the superintendent. This is the board that serves the superintendent. And so moving beyond that, I do want to say that policy does not live forever, Mrs. Provance. Policy can change. So that's important. Times change. I guarantee you we're going to have an AI policy pretty soon, and that it's going to change continuously. Also, I lived for years in Los Angeles. I can tell you that LA Unified District has 430,000 students. 10 years ago, they had 600,000 students. Where they all went, I don't know. But you can't tell me that those students don't have the problems that our students have and the challenges that our students have times 1,000-fold. And the reality is, those students that you are citing, those are the very students whose education must be protected, because that is their way to advance out of their life circumstances. Those are the students that don't have the adults that are protecting them. And so I feel that the responsibility to protect them becomes even more imperative that we shoulder that responsibility. And I feel a great weight upon my shoulders. And I realize that this hasn't been everyone's fight, but it has been mine, and I have 2.5 minutes left. And if you told me that I walked over there and got on my knees, because I'm willing to do it, if it would change your mind, I would.
Board Member Bruner, did you have anything further? Okay. And Board Member Provance, did you have anything further? Okay, there's a motion on the table for a special meeting in 2 weeks to discuss cell phones. This time we'll take a vote. A vote in favor would be...
I did not have a second opportunity.
Yeah, I believe you did when you first made the motion, and then when we circled back around.
I made the motion, then discussion opened. I had one opportunity to speak.
I believe you made...
I made the motion under board comments.
Is the board all right if we allow Board Member Byrne another 5 minutes? Okay, Board Member Byrne, go ahead.
to speak to why we need policy and what we agree on and what we disagree on. And I think Miriam mentioned this, and I agree with a lot of what she said. If we had strong enforcement of the student handbook and the language the way it's written right now, or strongly moving in that direction, then I would agree. But the tool we have left is to create policy, because it's not being implemented. And when we get communication that softens the language, it gives me greater concern. And the communication we received was that at the high school level, all other electronic devices, such as, but not limited to, cell phones, headphones, wireless earbuds, smartwatches, may be in the student's possession as long as they are not disruptive to the educational process or in violation of site use procedures. That is, for high schools, a step backward from the student handbook. So why do we need policy? Because right now, the language that we're putting into our handbooks is going in the wrong direction. And I agree with Miriam, it's okay to disagree now and then. In fact, if you're not, I don't see how it's intellectually honest. You've got to disagree sometimes. It's okay. And in this case, if it's not being enforced, it is years past time, that we create a policy to drive the district forward. To not move for this policy the way I see it is to apparently be okay with the idea that students may have cell phones in high school in their possession so long as they're not disruptive. I'm not okay with that. I think that's why we need to do policy. And to answer some of the concerns against it are straw man arguments.
Define that.
Ms. Provance, this idea that we can't make it policy because we don't know how to word it, or there's a bunch of exceptions, does not apply universally to anything. I mean, of course there are exceptions to policy, just like there's exceptions to law. We have drug policies that would make it against policy for students to be in possession of Percocet or Xanax or Adderall. They don't have a prescription for it. Are there students that need those medications? Yeah. So there are responsible carve-outs. I mean, that's just distracting from the actual discussion here of what we can accomplish across the district as a majority of the district, to say that, well, some students might be diabetic and they need their phone. That's not a reason to have every other student have their phone. That's a reason that that student can have an exception. And I'm sure that we can work that out, because we do that in a lot of ways already. So I'll close by asking again that we hold a special session to vote on the language that I read earlier that would empower Dr. Lathan, in conjunction with district attorneys and the MSBA, to create language that we could then vote on and all agree to, that would then come back to us, I guess, shortly after the start of the school year, so that we could have a chance to accomplish something this year, rather than to delay this for another full year.
I have a question.
A question?
Yes. Is that a motion that he's talking about right now, or is that just a discussion that we're having?
He did formally make a motion, and it was seconded by Board Member McCoskey, so we are going to...
Can you repeat the motion?
Board Member Byrne, do you mind to repeat the motion?
Let me find my notes. The motion is... I don't see the note that I actually wrote it down on. The motion is that we hold a special session
I've got the
meeting
first half.
within the next 2 weeks with the intent of voting on the language that I emailed to President Kincaid on June 20th, which I read earlier.
That wasn't quite the motion. The motion was for a special meeting to be held within 2 weeks to discuss cell phones and learning environments with the intention of creating a policy or something along those lines.
And that was my point.
That's what you heard too?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's what I wanted to clarify, because that was my point of clarification, because the language that he just used is different than the language that was in the initial motion and the second motion. I don't agree with the first motion where he talked, well, I don't know. The one where it allows for our lawyers to, and Dr. Lathan and others to come together to work on something, does that require a special meeting is what I'm asking, because that's different.
We have one motion on the table that has been seconded that we have to deal with.
And that one is
The motion to hold
to
a special
discuss.
meeting within 2 weeks to discuss cell phones and learning environment with the intention of creating a policy. Did I say, okay. And Mr. McCoskey is agreeing with that. That motion is on the table. We'll vote. We'll do a verbal vote at this time. A vote in favor would move us forward to calendaring a special meeting. Board Member Byrne, how will you vote?
Aye.
For the purpose that's discussed, no.
And your vote is no? Okay, and chair votes no. Motion fails 3-4. Are there any further board member comments at this time?
I do have.
Oh, and yes, and Board Member Mohammed Khani, yes, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. I know that we talked about this yesterday at the MSBA meeting, and it was my recollection that this is going to come to the board for a change in August, and I just confirmed with Dr. Lathan. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Can I?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So what you have before you is a copy of the email, and I can send it to you electronically as well, of outlining the discipline policy and why I think that we're out of compliance. So I talked about this, 3 times now. I did email it a couple of weeks ago or maybe longer. And so, as Ms. Kincaid alluded to, it's coming to us in August because right now it's with legal. But that's really not what I was looking to achieve. So the way I look at how things work is that the board looks at an issue and then we decide what we want. And then we direct legal to assist us in crafting it, providing the format, the language, and then it comes to us and then we ultimately get to decide on the precise language. But in my opinion, we have in the past and we continue to do things backwards or upside down. And this is not the first time that this is happening. There was an issue about a year ago that was also punted to the attorneys and it bypassed the board. I can see how this happens. It's so much easier for the board president and or the superintendent to direct the attorney, who then brings it to the board when it's all said and done, wrapped up, nice package with a bow. And in this case, a policy, it comes with the expectation that it will be rubber stamped by this board. I just personally don't think that this is the right approach because I feel that it undermines the will of this body. The attorneys were not elected to direct policy. They work for us, they help us, and I think it would be good for us to remember that. With the other case, it took almost a year to resolve this issue. That bypassed the board and went to the legal route. An opinion was given, and then it was somewhere for some time. I am glad at this point that Dr. Lathan is taking steps in a positive direction on that issue because it does relate to student safety. What I don't want to see is our discipline take this route, which sounds like it has. Anyhow, this is synopsis for you so that you're informed and it will help you make a better determination when you see the policy in August and we can talk about it. Okay, I do want to talk about, with this discussion on the cell phones, I have some concerns about the process by which we bring items to the board. So yes, I was disappointed to see that the cell phone got left off the agenda. But then I'm sitting here listening to the antics of board leadership, and I think it's just tragic. we had 3 public comment speakers who apparently got the message that this was going to be on the agenda, and that we can't even agree on the facts for board meeting minutes, something that we could just go back and watch the meeting. I think is embarrassing. We ended up having the discussion anyway that Mr. Byrne wanted. You know, at the time, I assumed, so the presumption was that at the time I thought, well, we have just, the agenda's so stacked, we're so busy, but you know, we got the meeting done in an hour. So this idea is that we can't get the items we want on the agenda because it has to get pushed off because, you know, there's an order and we got to get to things in time. And I really would like to get clarity because there's like, I thought there was a conundrum. And the conundrum at the time was because at the same time, we get an email from the board secretary that tells us that the September study session and the September regular session are now combined into a combined session. So we're skipping July, then we have one meeting in August, then we only have 1 meeting in September. And so I thought that the board leadership felt that maybe there weren't enough topics for us to come together and deliberate on, but that's not the case. I'm sensing that there's this wanting to just shut down discourse. We have a lot to get done. Discipline policy is an example. And I'm glad it's coming to us in August because after hearing Dr. Mary Byrne, apparently it's a statutory priority now. As I am talking on this, I do want to say that in a recent article, it said that we are having 2 meetings most months, probably because on the school board page on SBS's website, it says that we typically meet twice a month and that they're live streamed, but that's not correct. Depending on the year, we have retreats and special meetings and executive sessions and all that. But we don't routinely meet twice a month to conduct routine business, so maybe we should correct that. That's all.
Any further board member comments?
I have one. May I speak
Yeah,
again?
go ahead.
Did you support a second or 2 rounds?
Um,
I just want to know if 2 rounds, is that a
I can
norm?
do this by email.
Okay, that's fine. Board member McCoskey, did you have any
But I
board?
do want to know for future reference.
I haven't given my board comments yet.
No, but are we allowed 2 rounds of comments?
That is what
By
the board
Robert's
has.
rules?
No, that's what the board decided recently. by a
Okay,
motion.
so Mrs. Bruner could make her comments
Correct.
after you conclude?
Correct.
Got it.
Board member McCoskey, did you have any board comments? Okay, that brings us back. Did you have any comments? Okay. Board member Byrne, did you have any comments? Further comments? Anything?
Sure, I'll have some comments. We had 2 weeks to review the language in the minutes. And if we needed a correction for accuracy matters, it would be helpful for me. Yes, we can go back and watch the minutes. It would have been helpful if I knew that this was an issue that was had by board members. Then during our time outside of the board, I could have gone back and watched. But just to suggest that the rest of the board is just against your positions just because of a 4-3 vote is just a false statement. The reality is that if you wanted my support, you'd give me time to look up the accuracy of your statements. I don't have the opportunity to do that now. You know, we come here and you say that you said something was going to be on the agenda or not be on the agenda. You guys clearly come with the plan, and I'm not privy to that information in order for me to prepare to be supportive or not supportive. And so it would have been helpful had I known that you had concerns about the language in our minutes for me to know that. Then I could have looked at the video to support or not support. But just to kind of throw that at me at the last minute, I think it's just it's not genuine to keep saying that you can't get the support of any board members. Well, you keep throwing stuff at us at the last minute, and it doesn't give us an opportunity to be able to support you or not.
I would like to speak.
Okay.
Dr. Thomas Tate, I spent a good portion of this meeting explaining how I have, on 4 occasions over the last 3 weeks, tried to get on the agenda with the purpose of having plenty of runway for everyone to be able to see the language, study it, be prepared.
About the minutes.
Those emails were not responded to. I was left
Different
this
issues
meeting to adapt on the fly. I am sorry. I do not know how I could have done this any differently to give more attempt for everyone to have plenty of time and to have the information in front of them. That is why I am so frustrated, because that is exactly what I've done.
Board Member Mohammed Khani.
I'd like for you to finish the first round and then do the second.
We are on the second round already.
Oh, you've already spoken?
I have not spoken. I'm going to wait till the end, but go ahead.
So you will speak one round?
I will speak one round.
Okay, just trying to go in order. Just to set the record straight, Dr. Thomas Tate.
Thank you.
I have not spoken with Mr. Byrne since discovering that this item was not on the agenda. So did not come with a plan other than the one that we set out 2 weeks ago. And furthermore, the reason I did not communicate, but I will, I'm going to change the way that I'm going to communicate with the board members, because I sent this more than 2 weeks ago, and the very last line says, please distribute this communication to all members as an informational document referencing communication that already took place at the board table, and it didn't go anywhere. So I think what I will do is I will, in the future, before the board meetings, if I want my fellow board members to have information, to come prepared with the plan I have, because I really want you to know my plan, because then you can participate. I don't have to talk the 5 minutes. I could just talk for 2 minutes.
That'd be helpful.
That would be helpful. But working through the board president is not accomplishing that goal. So what I will do is I will do what Dr. Lathan does, which is fantastic. She sends informational, and then at the top, I got to figure out how to do the yellow highlight. Do not respond. This is informational. This is FYI for you, like to prepare for the board meeting. And then I suppose that's the path forward, and that way you know what's coming and you have time to review it.
Thank you.
Oh, of course.
So historically, board members have sent informational items, and I don't have to ask how high to jump when you tell me to do something. This is not time sensitive. It's being worked on by our attorneys right now so that it can come to the board in August. So that's why I didn't forward it. Board policy BDDB2, titled agendas, says any board member may request that items be placed on the agenda by notifying the board president or superintendent, which has happened multiple times during my presidency. The agenda items will be included on the tentative agenda unless the board recently discussed the same issue, which we have. The board president decides that they should be reserved for a future meeting, which I did, or the member agrees otherwise. This is the only time in my board presidency that I have been asked to put an item on the agenda and I didn't do it the exact next meeting. And Board Member Byrne, you're right, I should have probably reached out to you earlier. I eventually heard from you, I think on Thursday, after an email Sunday saying that you were gonna reach out to me. And I told you, Board Member Byrne, that I was concerned if I placed it on the agenda this evening, that we would have a sunshine violation, and that I suggested you motion to put it on next meeting's agenda, or trust that I will follow back around RE if a policy should be brought to the board. I'm trying to find a workable compromise which has taken more than the 2 weeks in between the meetings. I suspect if you motion this evening, it will fail, and that's exactly what occurred. I am trying to compromise with this board, but it's if I don't do what you tell me to do when you tell me to do it, all of a sudden, I'm a bad president. And I'm tired of it.
Exactly.
I'm not saying that cell phones isn't gonna go on the agenda, but no, it didn't get put on the agenda this evening. And that's at the discretion of Vice President Bruner and I, and this board. I say this, Joe, I know we've had this conversation. What's the very first thing we do every single board meeting? Approval of the agenda. It is not my agenda. It's not Ms. Bruner's agenda. It is our agenda, and we all have to approve it. So no, it didn't get put on the agenda this evening. Now that we've spent more time talking about cell phones, Again, when I asked that we could just move it to the August meeting, I suspect I'll get another recommendation of that from board members. But please go read Board Policy BDDB-2 entitled Agendas. I'll leave it at that. And to end on a high note, if there is such one, I very much enjoyed my time on, today's Tuesday, yeah, Monday and Tuesday at the MSBA meeting. I always learned so much there. I know that we sat in multiple sessions, and the speakers are just fantastic. So thank you to the board members who took time to attend that.
Do you know when we find out the results of the election?
Of the MSBA election,
They should be posted.
they were,
Were they posted?
I don't know if they were posted, but
I can probably tell you. I can send that to you. I don't have their names right offhand.
Okay. The next board meeting will be a Board of Education combined study session and regular meeting on August 20th of 2024. We do not have any board meetings in July so that we can take a break. That moves us to item 9.01, a motion that the board adjourn the meeting for this evening.
So moved.
Motion from Board Member Thomas Tate. Do I
Really
have a
quick.
second? Second from Board Member Provance, and we will vote.
Kelly, I will email this to you that everybody got.
The motion that the board adjourn the meeting passes 7-0, and we will see you in August.